Welcome back. I just wanted to encourage everybody to take their seats so we can get started this afternoon. Boy, you guys get quiet really quickly. Let's give us a couple of more minutes. People are still coming in. I hope everybody had a really great lunch and had a chance to network and enjoyed the breakout sessions. We're really looking forward to hearing people's feedback on the breakout sessions and this new format for Chow and if people enjoy it. Great. Well, welcome back. And as everyone gets seated, I'd like to thank our sponsors who made Capitol Hill Ocean Week possible, especially our signature sponsor, NOAA, our presenting sponsors, the Phil Stevenson Foundation, the Henry Foundation, the Walton Family Foundation, and the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation. We're just going to see a couple of videos about our sponsors.
NOAA's work spans from the bottom of the sea to the surface of the sun. Each day, our employees take the pulse of the changing world around us and share that knowledge with others to ensure public safety, protect and restore marine resources, and strengthen our economy.
I like to say that the Gulf of Mexico is America's coast. It's critically important in terms of what it produces for the United States in terms of energy, in terms of shipping, in terms of fisheries. My job is to just get the message out far and wide that Louisiana is facing a really dire coastal crisis.
In 1927, we set the Mississippi River in its channel. That was good for us to build communities, but in the long term, it was very bad.
We began to starve the delta of the very thing which had built it, which is sediment carried by the Mississippi River.
We often get asked if these issues related to coastal land loss are fixable or solvable, and wholeheartedly the answer is yes.
Great. I just want to thank our sponsors once again for their tremendous support and being able to help us provide this conference. So life on Earth depends on our oceans. And whether you live along the coast or inland, a healthy, sustainable ocean matters. We know the ocean is home to magnificent wildlife and incredible seascapes. It regulates our climate and impacts our weather. It provides food to nourish our communities and resources that bolster commerce, and it is a blue backyard to millions. A healthy ocean is key to a healthy economy. We are glad to have Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, the Assistant Secretary for Commerce for Oceans and Atmosphere, and the Acting NOAA Administrator, join us this afternoon. With 32 years of distinguished military service, including serving as Oceanographer of the Navy, and a PhD from Scripps Institute of Oceanography, Rear Admiral Gallaudet is a dedicated public servant who understands the importance of our oceans. He is also a strong supporter for national marine sanctuaries and plans to visit each one of them during his service with NOAA. I'm glad to have such an ocean champion kick off our afternoon on this first day of Chow. So please join me in welcoming Rear Admiral Gallaudet.
That was great. Thank you very much, Chris. And I'll tell you, I've had a lot of titles, Doctor, Admiral, Commander, and I like that Ocean Champion one. That was good. That's the best yet. Second only to Dad. Well, it's great to be here. Good afternoon, everybody. And I mean that very much. So first off, and I'm going to apologize to Chris up front, my enthusiasm for all of what we do at NOAA is unlimited, and so I might be going long. And if you have to pull the hook out for me, Chris, just know the last thing I'm going to talk about is sanctuaries. So, just saying. But it's an honor to be here delivering the keynote at Capitol Hill Oceans Week. And it's a big week for the ocean and our coast and Great Lakes today because last week the President proclaimed June as National Oceans Month. And this was a real victory. You know, I think many have questioned the commitment to the oceans and science in this administration. And the President went out loud and clear and sent out a great message about the value of our oceans to our country and especially to the administration. Let me quote this proclamation. To advance America's economic, security, and environmental interest, it is also critical that we explore, map, and inventory our nation's waters and pursue advanced observational technologies and forecasting capabilities. We will augment our economic competitiveness and enhance our national security to ensure American prosperity. And then he also identified the need to preserve the marine environment for the enjoyment of current and future generations. That is music to my ears, and I am very excited to have the key leadership role in implementing these activities. So it's the subject of this presentation, too, about what NOAA is doing to advance the American blue economy. Now, first off, kind of as a way to introduce this, let me give you an analogy. For folks who know me, I'm really kind of into cardiovascular health and conditioning. I was a distance swimmer growing up. And so, you know, I work hard to kind of maintain my body and physical fitness so that my body will work for me and take care of me. And it's funny, John White, are you in the room, John? I don't know if you are. He's the Consortium for Ocean Leadership lead, great shipmate of mine too. And he likes to joke, he said, gosh, Tim, ever since you left the Pentagon, you've been reverse aging. And I had to laugh. I'm not sure what it is. I told him it's either good, clean living, and remember, I was a sailor for 32 years, so that's very unlikely. And, or just the sheer excitement and joy I experience every day in working for NOAA, and that is the absolute truth. So, you know, my theme is going to be, just like exercising, NOAA is working very hard. Our team is on a treadmill, and they are running at race pace to do great things for our oceans so that our oceans can do great things for us. And just that's my takeaway for you all today. But we're going to talk about the blue economy, and kind of like physical fitness, I think the oceans are very much the same. You know, they're the Earth's circulatory system, globally producing and distributing oxygen, momentum, heat, flux, nutrients, water, and as well as trade. 90% of all trade goes via the oceans, and in fact, 99% of all information flow is via undersea cables. So our oceans are incredibly important. And so, you know, the overall national and global economy depends upon our oceans, and then that very specific segment of the blue economy is that which is directly dependent upon our coasts, oceans, and Great Lakes. And so that's really what I'm going to talk about. And so consider these numbers. Coastal and offshore regions are home to 126 million people. That's 40% of the U.S. population, and that number is growing rapidly. The blue economy GDP grew at a rate of 5.7% last year. That is double the rate of growth for the rest of the economy. I mean, so the oceans are the growth market. And the blue economy employment, check this out, over the last 5 years or so, has grown by 24%. That's 4 times the employment rate growth in every other sector. So, you know, the oceans are it, and so a continued focus on what NOAA is doing is going to really bolster and expand exponentially America's economic prosperity. And so our programs are doing this in a great way, and they have immense return on investment. And before I describe those in detail, let me give you our top-level goals, and this is for the record. Overall, we are going to double or contribute to doubling the current economic contributions of our U.S. exclusive economic zone over the coming decade. That's our goal overall. There's a few main elements of this that we're pursuing. One is seafood production and competitiveness. And our goal there, sub-goal, is to triple U.S. marine aquaculture by 2030 and maximize our sustainable yields in our wild capture stocks, all in an effort to reduce the $14 billion seafood trade deficit we have. That's one. 2, maritime commerce. Our goal is to increase vessel safety and efficiency at all U.S. major seaports. 3, ocean exploration. We are going to make seafloor maps of the entire U.S. EEZ area, the area deeper than 200 meters, available to private industry in the next 10 years. And then we're going to characterize the full EEZ by 2030. And this is really exciting. We're also going to deploy new, what they call OMIC, genomic type of technology, so we can monitor our fisheries in a much more adaptive and responsive and efficient way. And so it's using environmental DNA technology, which is really interesting and I'll talk about later. 4, energy development. We're going to increase the development of renewable and non-renewable energy sources offshore, but in a sustainable way with mindful intent to protect the environment. And lastly, tourism and recreation. We are going to increase ecotourism and outdoor recreation in U.S. coastal areas, and of course, we are going to promote the expansion of our national marine sanctuaries. Yes. Now, to achieve these awesome goals, because I think they're awesome and I'm excited about them, we have a kind of an overall approach here, and it's emphasizing and increasing and expanding our strategic partnerships with government agencies, the private sector, academia, such as the National Oceanographic Partnership Program. And we're considering, and we hope to be able to make a formal announcement, but we're looking at maybe having this National Oceanographic Partnership Program Summit in the summer sometime. We're still exploring that, but the idea would be to convene a large group of leaders in industry in the areas I mentioned and talk about specific opportunities for partnering in projects of our interest. And let me list a few of those, and my point with these are that we're already making great progress and have already established terrific partnerships, and the idea is, again, to strengthen and expand them. One is aquaculture. We have had an acting assistant secretary for conservation and management, Paul Doremus, and he has been leading over the year our overall engagement with the National Aquaculture Association and the large number of businesses behind that. He's been doing terrific work, and again, we are going to promote and expand that. In underwater acoustics, we have just done fantastic work. We have a fellow named Dr. Bob Ziak at the Pacific Marine Environmental Lab who designed and built a hydrophone that he deployed 10,800 meters into the Challenger Deep in the Marianas Trench, and it worked. And was able for the first time to record the acoustic environment in that region. Really awesome work. He partnered with the Coast Guard to do it because they had a vessel out of Guam, which made it really efficient. So the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Sequoia allowed that great experiment to happen. In ocean observation and exploration, we have a researcher named Dr. Rick Lumpkin at our Atlantic Oceanography and Marine Laboratory, and he had developed a clever partnership with the Volvo Ocean Race, and they agreed to deploy some of our ocean buoys for observing the ocean in these areas. We don't have many observations. A really innovative partnership there. And then at his counterpart lab, the Pacific Marine Environmental Lab, Greg Johnston has led an effort with Paul Allen and his deep pockets to deploy the Deep Argo system in the Atlantic. And this is the next generation of Argo floats, which are going to allow us to explore down at 6,000 meters. Groundbreaking, pioneering technology and partnership efforts there. And then in marine debris, we've done great things there in our program to just clean up the trash in the oceans for the betterment of the environment, the marine life, and us. And so we have a fantastic employee named Paula Keener who yesterday was able to realize a great partnership effort with the European Union to have them bring their ocean plastics laboratory here to the U.S. and make that transatlantic crossing. So great partnership work there. And then lastly, air-sea interaction, a very important area to study and continue research on. And I was hosted by Dr. Robin Webb over at our Earth Systems Research Laboratory, and his Physical Sciences Division is doing great work there, partnering with the Cooperative Institute we have at University of Colorado Boulder to study air-sea interaction. So those are the kind of NOP projects we hope to pursue, and that's the sort of summit we're going to have, hopefully this summer. More to follow. But we're going to build upon this progress, and together with our partners, we'll be able to accomplish a lot more than we could alone. So now let me kind of shift gears, and I'm going to go into each of those initiatives I talked about and into a little more detail. And first off, it's this area we call seafood production and competitiveness. So kind of depicted here, it's our fisheries and it's other things too. And under that we have 3 lines of effort, and it's all to kind of overcome this fact that we import 80% of the seafood we consume, yet we have the second largest EEZs and the best technical know-how for aquaculture in the world. And so our lines of effort are these. First off, we want to maximize yields in our fisheries in a sustainable way. Such good science behind our NOAA fisheries and really interesting work. And we're doing it by better science. So yesterday I was at a conference, and our Dr. Jason Link has led this draft report we'll release very soon on the next generation of our stock assessment enterprise. It's building upon our stock assessment improvement plan, and it's just a lot of powerful science. It's complicated too, I'll tell you, but we're getting much better at assessing our stocks. And it involves things like better monitoring. So we have a great employee named Brett Alberg who leads our electronic monitoring. And very soon, we will be doing recreational catch reporting with a device. It's unbelievable to me that we still have human observers on board, but it's all going to be electronic very shortly. And that's a great transformation we're making. It's going to save money, it's going to be better and more effective. And then we have just exploded our use of drone technology. Our fishery science centers are out there, and they're using underwater, surface, and aerial drones to assess stocks, to monitor protected species in just a great and innovative way. And then they're also applying machine learning, artificial intelligence type of algorithms to process all this stuff. So it's, you hear a lot of talk about this, and we are implementing it as we speak. And we've been doing it for quite a while, almost a decade. Terrific researchers I've been engaging just this month, a guy named Dr. Phil Clapham and also Jessica Krantz over at our Alaska Fisheries Science Center. They're in the Marine Mammal Laboratory kind of division there, and they also work with Aaron Moreland and Katie Sweeney, are just doing terrific work. And they actually got their technology from our Northeast Fisheries Science Center, who pioneered the use of using these unmanned systems. That was Kristen Kahn. And they also ended up, the machine learning piece, they didn't sit there and write the code themselves. They were smart. That's what I did when I was getting a master's degree. I had to write the code myself. But they did it. They went online. They found this company called Kaggle. And for free, they outsourced, they competed and outsourced algorithm development to do all the processing to identify seals, northern fur seals in the imagery. Really innovative work there. And then lastly, we've developed better management tools. You all have heard this thing, big data kind of concept. Well, our fisheries folks, specifically a guy named Dr. Elliot Hazen, he was at the conference I was at yesterday. He's developed this terrific dynamic ocean management tool he calls EchoCast. He's done it with a great team. And what it's doing is it's taking real-time satellite imagery and combining that with very historical catch records as well as recent ones, and then historical distributions of protected species. And he's able to produce this kind of an image of the California offshore region, and kilometer resolution of kind of blue and red, if you will, areas that are good to fish and not, based on if there are fish there and if there are protected species there. It's just much more comprehensive in space and time. The way we did it before, it was just very overcautious. And now we're really able to help optimize access for fishermen and also reduce bycatch significantly. So we're just applying great knowledge and know-how. So one, our fisheries, expanding and maximizing yields. The second element of our seafood production piece is increasing exports. And we are situated fairly well because I work for Secretary Wilbur Ross, the Commerce Department Secretary. So we have made a point that every time he engages with his counterparts on trade, he was just in China this week, we talk about gaining advantage in market access for our producers and our exporters, pardon me. And so he's doing that. There's no better leader we could have championing that cause. And so that's the second one. And then the last thing is increasing aquaculture in the U.S. And I've visited our fisheries labs that are just doing amazing, groundbreaking science and technology for aquaculture. I've been to some of these labs in Washington, Florida, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Mississippi, and I've seen, we are helping grow this industry with species like mahi-mahi, salmon, oysters, clams, abalone, mussels, shrimp, seaweed. It's just terrific. Really good work here, and we're growing it in leaps and bounds. And specifically, we have some of the brightest in the world. The Milford Lab in Connecticut, for example, they're the sort of the mother of aquaculture. They started it all in the early 1900s, and so that was a terrific place to visit with Dr. Gary Wickfors, who's a lead there. And so that's just a really neat element of our program. So we're growing that. We're also trying to address a couple deficiencies. One is, government bureaucracy makes siting for aquaculture locations difficult, and we're trying to streamline that bureaucracy. And so, for example, with our National Ocean Service, Dr. Jim Morris has developed this really cool tool for the Gulf called the Gulf Aqua Mapper. And it puts in, in one nice tight tool, all the different data layers that you need to know about to select a site for aquaculture and all the different uses. For example, is it a military training range? What's the bathymetry like? Is there oil and gas development? All the competing uses, all the data about the environment right there on your laptop, and it just makes, it makes making decisions like this. Rose Canyon in San Diego was trying to develop an aquaculture siting plan, and they had to spend about $1 million in a couple years, all to make the determination that they couldn't put it where they wanted to go. And this tool will allow them to do the same thing in a day at a lot less cost. So great work like that, improving and streamlining our permitting. We need to increase or improve our national standards and traceability rules, and so that we can make sure our fishermen are playing on an even keel with the other fishermen in other countries. We're going to invest in a lot of research and technology. I was able to see, another great lab is our Manchester lab in Washington. Dr. Kevin Werner, he's a meteorologist, by the way, and came from the Weather Service. He now directs the Northwest Fisheries Science Center. And he's doing that. He was selected because he's just a great leader. So a great scientist, a great leader, and his team is just killing it in Puget Sound-related work and partnering with the Puget Sound Restoration Fund. So really terrific things there. We're also going to work on proof of concept projects. We have two partners in Miami and in Baltimore. Our Miami partner is with the Rosenstiel School at the University of Miami. His name is Dr. Dan Benetti, terrific guy. He is a leader in aquaculture development, and so we're teaming up with him to promote business development. And then his counterpart in Baltimore near the National Aquarium is Dr. Yoni Zohar, and he's right there too on this coast and doing the same thing. So those are just examples of the work we're promoting. And the last piece of aquaculture is, we need to tell the story right. There's a lot of people who still have, I guess, holdover knowledge that it's either unsafe or it degrades the environment. We're much smarter, and it's much more sustainable now. And so we have some terrific communicators like Cindy Sandoval in our Fisheries Comms and Outreach Office telling that story and getting out there and spreading that word. And so that's our aquaculture effort, and I'm very proud of it. Now, moving on to another area, maritime commerce and the marine transportation system. Like I said earlier, the oceans are like this circulatory system for the environment, for water and oxygen and whatnot, as well as trade. And so that's what we're talking about in terms of their link to the global commerce enterprise. Look around this room. Everybody's probably wearing something or carrying something that came to you via ship, because 90% again of trade comes overseas. And so our sea lanes of communication are absolutely vital. Interesting statistic here, the total vessel calls in our U.S. ports from 2002 to 2015 grew by nearly 50%. That is explosive growth right there, and it's growing even further. We expect it to double by 2030. So we want to capitalize on that. We want to enable that, and we have all the right information and data to do it. Now, there's some challenges. Our navigation, we have nearly 100,000 miles of coastline, and in our near-shore region, we have over 10,000 wrecks. Some of them are navigation hazards. So charting those continuously is absolutely essential to promote trade in our transportation system. We have great partnerships in this lane. We work with the University of New Hampshire, and we have a retired NOAA Corps officer up there who leads our partnership effort there, and it's Captain Andy Armstrong. And another interesting partnership effort that I think is just a terrific story, Fugro, who develops marine electronics, they, in the work they do, also collect bathymetry and hydrography data, and they have shared 65,000 square kilometers of data just this year alone with us in what they call a crowdsourced bathymetry effort. And so that is just extraordinary work. We're getting smarter here in our partnerships, and we're doing a lot more with less, and it's an exciting thing. I think really we are setting a standard in the federal government for that kind of work. We're also expanding our navigation services in a really terrific program we call Precision Navigation. And what that's about is it is using very high-def bathymetric surveys in the channels in U.S. ports, along with what we call the PORTS program, the Physical Oceanographic Real-Time System, and that's just current meters, anemometers, air gap sensors under bridges, all tailored to the port to maximize the efficiency and safety of these ports. And we've done it in Los Angeles, for example. We've done it in several others, installed this system. Systems cost about $5 million a pop in a given major port, And the return on investment is such that, they allow the safe shipping of traffic every day. You have if you have a vessel that closes the channel for one day, our major U.S. ports lose about $100 million that day. So think about that, $5 million for $100 million each day times 365. That's some pretty darn high return on investment. I told that to the Commerce Secretary. I said, you probably can't find another higher ROI project in the entire government. And he said, I'm sure of that. So good to brag about that a little bit. But we're going to be doing this in the port of the lower Mississippi, as well as New Jersey and New York. And I'm very excited to have those, get those in place. The Los Angeles effort we did, it was a great example. We did this in the port of Long Beach and Los Angeles, and it was all spearheaded by an absolute pro in hydrography, a NOAA Corps officer named Captain Richard Brennan. And Rich went in there with his team, and they installed the sensors I talked about. They did the precision bathy survey, and this port now is able to allow 4 vessels of a draft 4 feet deeper than previously, down to 69 feet. And so that's like those monster ships right there. And that here's the math. If you were, like, say, just carrying crude oil, a tanker, if it has 1 more foot of draft, can carry $2 million more of product. And that's just one ship, 1 foot. When you think about all the traffic in and out of U.S. ports, it's billions of dollars of increased economic activity. It's great things for the country. So this precision nav effort is going forward fast. Another neat example of this is in the port of Miami, which I got to visit a few months ago. And they wanted to install a simple set of 3 current meters on buoys, nav buoys the Coast Guard already had. So we did this, and a terrific Ocean Service employee named Chris Paternoster got up there in front of the port authorities, and he gave a brief about how these current meters work. Slick technology, really, great stuff. So vital, though, because the Gulf Stream runs perpendicular to the channel entrance. And we actually got out there and watched a ship trying to come in with several knots of current going perpendicular to the ship. Who's driven a ship here? I have. So it's like an aircraft carrier. Very much these big tankers are about the same size. And when you have a current offsetting you and you have a very narrow channel to get in, it is not fun. And so these current meters allow pilots to more safely navigate in, knowing the current, knowing how to counter against it so they don't run aground. Great stuff here, hugely important for our commerce and trade. And highlighting all this, I think, was I got to attend the Coast Guard Commandant's change of command last Friday. This was Admiral Zunkampf getting relieved by Admiral Schultz. And it was like, first of all, the President was there, the Vice President was there, the Secretary of Homeland Security was there, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs was there, and several others, and me. So yeah, that's where I was. But what was great about that ceremony is the President and the Commandant all talked about what the Coast Guard does to promote trade. There's $4.6 trillion of goods coming in and out of U.S. ports every year. And the Coast Guard, one of their 11 missions by law is to promote the safe and efficient activity of our ports. And so there was so much talk about that. I thought this change of command was really a sort of recognition of all that NOAA does, because the Coast Guard, they cannot do that mission without us. And in fact, it was recognized a week earlier when Vice Admiral Sandy Stowes talked at her change of command and retirement. She was their Director of Operations. She actually called me out by name, not that I'm worth anything, but my title being leading NOAA right now, and my flag lieutenant as being just such key partners for the Coast Guard going forward. And there was a very short list of people she named by name, so that just sort of shows you how important we are to this whole area of maritime trade and commerce. Now, another area I probably should have started on, which I think is so neat, is ocean exploration. And this program, it is the only program in the country doing this, exploring this area of our oceans where 70% of the planet is covered by water and only 5% of that has been explored. Meanwhile, we know to a higher fidelity what the surface of Mars and the Moon look like. And so, the administration has put forward NASA's Deep Space Initiative to put someone on the Moon again and then Mars. And they're building big rockets, the Space Launch System, and they're all behind that. And it'll generate a lot of economic activity, and that's all great. But I'll tell you right now, we absolutely should complement that effort with a deep sea exploration initiative. And that's what we are doing going forward. We're going to take the program run by Alan Leonardi and his crack team, and we are going to expand it. And we're We're looking to do that in the 2020 budget, and if we can get that through the department and the White House, we'll see what we can build upon moving forward in 2021. And so a very exciting thing in that program because of the direct returns it has. It's things like, of course, mapping and exploration will support the aquaculture and marine transportation work I talked about, but it'll also support offshore mining of critical minerals and rare earth elements and energy. The mining piece is a fascinating one. Right now, today, the RV Kilo Moana has some of our team and equipment on board, and they're surveying an area called the Clarion-Clipperton Zone in the Pacific, which has, along when you count another area in the Pacific called the Pacific Crust Zone, these two areas, they have more rare earth minerals and critical minerals than all terrestrial sources combined times 1,000. That's the opportunity right there. Now, it's interesting, NASA is proposing to potentially mine asteroids for rare earth minerals, and I can tell you right now, I think we're going to be able to do a lot more in our ocean backyard. And so we're going to really push that going forward, and it has national security implications because 100% of the rare earth minerals that we need and use are imported. We're not accessing them in our own CONUS or EEZs, but we know there's potential out there. And so we're really going to work with this program to explore and exploit that. And then there's the equal potential for energy, as I mentioned. Another area for exploration I find fascinating is pharmaceuticals. So we are finding species with anti-cancer properties, and that's just very exciting too. And so lastly, though, let me move on to tourism and recreation. And this is, of course, talking about our sanctuaries. Now, interestingly, it's a lot broader than that. Our sanctuaries, we have, it's our coast, and it's our oceans. When you just sort of look at tourism around the country, that's $116 billion of activity in our coastal tourism industry and about 2 million jobs. And so NOAA has a key part in it. We make it safe for people to access the sea with our charts and our weather forecasts. We protect the health of our oceans through our ecosystem science and habitat management, essential fish habitat management, and protected resource management also. And then we also protect the health of people from harmful algal blooms. So, and we have real experts doing this. We have a guy named Dr. Rick Stump at our Ocean Service who is just like the world leader in this kind of work. And so I've really enjoyed learning from him. And so there's just great examples of the potential there. But let me just kind of conclude with the Sanctuary program, which I am just such a fan of. I met with the trustees of the foundation yesterday. It's interesting. There's only one ocean scientist in that whole group. The rest are lawyers and developers. But that's a good thing, by the way, because they know how to get stuff done, and we really need them to be our champion. Now, under John Armour's expert leadership, our sanctuaries are just poised. They're continuing doing great things for our country, bringing in $8 billion of economic activity every year, and again, they're poised for growth. Nature-based tourism is at an all-time high. Our sanctuaries are a key part of that. And we just have so many. I encourage you all, raise your hand if you've been to one. Look at that. Did you plant this group here, John? Wonderful places. I've been to 3 before I joined NOAA. I'm looking forward to visiting them all, as Chris mentioned. And they're just, all of them are working closely with local communities to sort of answer the niche they have. And so we have like shipwrecks in Thunder Bay. We have interesting ecosystems off the Olympic Peninsula, coral reefs at Florida Keys, another interesting type of reef off of Gray's Reef in Georgia. They're all amazing. And we're going to do a new one, we hope, in Mallows Bay in the Potomac River. And so right there is myself and my daughter, my youngest Cedar there at Mallows Bay. This is in the works. It's home to 100 historic World War I era shipwrecks. And really excited to see us move that. It's just nearly across the finish line. So to close, back in 1957, we started a time period in our history that people refer to as the space age. So this is the last half of the 20th century, and it was when we just started, getting someone on the moon, advancing exploration in space, and all those technologies behind it. I truly believe that this first half of the 21st century will be the ocean age, due to this rapid growth in all things ocean and maritime related. and the people living near them and the activities that they are pursuing. And it's the things I mentioned: seafood production, maritime transportation, economic growth through commerce and ocean exploration and ocean technology advancement, and even support to recreation and tourism. Our blue economy contributions will assure our country's national security and prosperity. So I want to thank the National Marine Sanctuaries Foundation for being such a vital part of this effort. And we have a very optimistic and exciting future ahead for NOAA and for the nation. So thank you all very much. I look forward to your questions.
So Admiral, thank you so much for your remarks, and thank you for taking time for questions as well. So picking up on the theme of the blue economy, I'm interested to see what you think. Are we positioning ourselves well in the U.S. to be a leader in the blue economy? And if you think so, why? What do you think we're doing right, and what do we need to do more of?
Well, if you had listened to me for the last 45 minutes.
I actually was.
But that was really it.
Yeah.
We are, not only are we positioned well as a country, what I'm excited about is NOAA is positioned so well to lead the efforts. We're within the Department of Commerce. We own the data that all that activity and the growth of that activity depends upon. And we just have the brightest people in the government and in the country who know how to get things done in this area. So yeah, we're positioned superbly.
Great, good to know. So one of the challenges, I think, when we talk about the blue economy is balance, and how we balance kind of economic development, resource extraction with ecosystem protection and biological diversity. And you have a foot in each world at NOAA. So how do you think about that balance, and how are you trying to strive the balance between the two?
That's a great question, Chris. And you know, we take that seriously. Our conservation mandates are all codified in law, and so we must do that. It's also the right thing to do. I grew up on the coast of California, and I've been a coastal resident my entire life, and I want our places and our life on the coast to thrive, and I want to enjoy that. So it's a difficult balance, but you know, as I mentioned earlier during my talk, it's good science and advanced technologies that are allowing us to do that better, to sort of find that sweet spot in terms of grow economically, but also manage and be good stewards of the environment. I'm convinced we can do that well because we have the smartest people and the neatest tools behind it.
That's good. And you talked about National Marine Sanctuaries, so we so appreciate your support for all of the National Marine Sanctuaries across the U.S. Outside of the tourism and recreation, what other role do you see them playing in the blue economy?
Well, I think, you know, the few I've seen, and I think I've corresponded with people at every one, there's great science there. So I mentioned, the economic advances will be underpinned by data and science, and so we can't have Florida Keys. Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary, it brings in about $2 billion a year with all the reef tourism, right? Well, we have to have healthy reefs, and right now that reef system is hurting due to Hurricane Irma and some disease. So there's great science going on to understand how to get ahead of that and restore that reef system. So that's probably one big area.
That's good to hear. That's one of the areas we've actually been focusing on, Chow, this year is, given all the changes that are taking place in the ocean, what is the role that restoration is really going to play in terms of kind of flipping how we think about before and afters into, you know, taking an unhealthy reef and trying to actually turn it into a healthy reef again. And
sure.
So the science that NOAA is doing and that a lot of our partners is doing is really critical.
Yes, yeah. Thanks.
So talking a little bit more about National Marine Sanctuaries and the potential for expansion or growth, I would love to just hear a little bit more about your kind of vision. And I know it was the last point you made, but I'd like to hear a little bit more about how you look at the marine protected areas and the role that sanctuaries can play in terms of marine conservation and also in terms of engagement of the public with their ocean.
Right. Well, as I said, I will be your champion to expand them.
Thank you.
There we go. Well, now, but then again, I can't promise you a rose garden.
Okay, that's fair.
Because we need to work with the local communities. We have to work in the interagency process. So so we don't have the final vote, and we shouldn't. It should be a team effort. And that's why we can't just automatically, unilaterally make these decisions, and we shouldn't, because it's a much more sustainable model to have everybody buying in.
Right.
And that's why, for example, we've kind of slowed the pace with the proposed sanctuary in Wisconsin, Lake Michigan, because that governor is got some concerns, and so we're not going to get ahead of him. But then again, there are opportunities that I'm very excited about, like Mallows Bay. Monitor, our original sanctuary, I'm very excited for, because the expansion involves including a number of World War II wrecks that all saw action when the war was brought to our shores. And that's what our sanctuaries, the diversity of all that they promote, healthy ecosystems, national heritage, and national pride.
Yeah.
And Monitor is squarely behind that. So again, we can't do that unilaterally. The Navy needs to get on board, oil and gas industry, and Department of Interior have a say. And so we're working that process now, and we think there's much to gain if we can get over that, move that over the goal line.
Right. And I really want to commend you and the team also on the work that was done on Flower Garden Banks and the proposal for expansion there. It was a real strong approach in terms of working with the community and a lot of diverse interests in the Gulf to move that effort forward and have a vote take place that was very positive. So
great.
Appreciate that as well.
Who has been to flower gardens here? Anybody? Raise your hand, please.
Wow.
Oh, you've dove it, haven't you? Craig has. That's a must-do, especially because their dive boat, the RV Manta, is really a dive ship. It is awesome. It's probably the best there is in the country.
It is an incredible vessel. So let's take some personal questions in the sense of, tell us a little bit, when you got the call to become the Assistant Secretary, tell us a little bit about your experience. What was that like when you got in? What made you want to say, yes, this is definitely a challenge I want to take on?
It wasn't hard for me, that's for sure, because I'd spent my whole time in the Navy doing what I'm doing now, but for the Navy. Mm-hmm. The Navy has 325,000 active duty sailors, so I was providing weather forecasts and charts and high seas warnings to naval units. But now I'm doing that for 325 million U.S. citizens. So I've had to up my game a little, but I enjoy it because I grew up in Southern California, fell in love with the coast. I've always lived on the coast since then. I live right on the western shore of the Chesapeake now, and so it was very easy.
Yeah.
I was thrilled actually. Timing was perfect. I had decided to retire in September of last year. And I gotten the call earlier, but I was able to get confirmed less than a month later. Yep. So got to go right back into it. And I will tell you right now, I am having more fun than I did in the Navy. And I had a lot of fun in the Navy. But this job is just so rewarding because the people are so passionate and they love what they do, and they're so bright. And I mean, every day I'm a kid in a candy store. I was not eager to go to the Pentagon every day, for the last 3 years. But I'm eager to go to NOAA and work with all the great people and do great things.
That's great to hear. Yeah, the dedicated public servants are really greatly appreciated in terms of all the work they do from weather to the ocean work. It's really appreciated by all of us. So when you look, you've been there for about a year now, a little less.
7 months.
Yeah. So what have you noticed as kind of some of the biggest challenges that you're facing, and where do you really want to see more maybe even just personally, where you really want to see where you could help move this organization?
Well, I'll say that the opportunities I'm very focused on, and you heard me talk about them. I see that the things I mentioned, seafood competitiveness, advancing the marine transportation system, I see the great opportunity, sanctuaries, ocean exploration. I'm very excited for those. And I didn't talk about our weather modeling, but that's another great priority that my counterpart, Dr. Jacobs, the Assistant Secretary for Earth Observations and Predictions, he's leading. We are going to have the best weather model in the world within a year. And it's already, our experimental model already is, and we're transitioning that from our geophysical fluid dynamics lab in Princeton. Thank you, Craig McLean. And that's exciting. I mean, we have the best weather enterprise in the world, and our model should reflect that, and it will very soon. So those are the wonderful opportunities. We have challenges, of course, like any organization with respect to research and resources. But I'm finding that we're able to, because of technology advancements, I think we can really, we can do more with less and better. And I'm seeing it happen. I gave you a number of examples with our fishery science folks.
Yeah.
That's happening in every line office.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we learned last year actually at Chow is the role that technology really can play in terms of moving ocean research forward much more quickly, more efficiently, a lot less expensive overall. So it's nice to see all these tools kind of being deployed by NOAA as we look into expanding the blue economy.
It's exciting. And what's great too is that, you know, this was not like directed from headquarters. This is just super smart people taking it on their own, innovating on their own initiative. And what we realize now, our political leadership and our career leadership, is that we really got to give them the tools they need to keep it going. And so that's kind of the things we're thinking about doing, is making sure they just have an open door and can run.
Got it. Well, you have this is a great audience that is here, and so you have, and I think you have a bunch of fans of NOAA, of ocean and Great Lakes conservation, and all the good work that NOAA does with other federal agencies to help protect these resources and support the science. So let me ask you, what would you like from us? How can we actually be helpful to NOAA and its mission?
Well, like we talked about yesterday, certainly specifically from the sanctuary's perspective, help spread that word. Because I think there's a lot of concern, or you know, there's various sectors that might not understand that these aren't high risk, and they won't risk what, you know, the things they want to pursue. We at our sanctuaries, we allow in many recreational fishing, commercial fishing, oil and gas development. So it's communicating that, helping us communicate their value. And then there's other things too that we also are potentially facing challenges. I talked about aquaculture. Again, a lot of the public doesn't understand it and maybe doesn't even think there's value to it. And so communicating the value of growing that industry, I think was something you could help us with too. And then just general, our story. I mean, our story is incredible. We are easily, I think, the best federal agency in transitioning cutting edge science to directly benefit the lives of the American people. But whose logo do you always see everywhere, anywhere? And it's usually the one with, like, you know, the little like space stuff on it, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So getting, you know, the word out on what we do, because we directly benefit the lives of the American people. That's a really great story. I mean, every American life, every day, and 1/3 of U.S. GDP. That's the impact we have. I'm pressed to know if there's any other department that does that.
I actually was at the Department of Commerce about 8 years ago, and we have had the same challenges ever since then. And I love NASA, but yes, every time we would see that instead of no, it was always a little bit hard. And you're absolutely right in terms of all the incredible work that the agency does for the American people and for the economy. So really appreciate that. Let's talk a little bit about aquaculture. And I know it's a very important priority of the Department of Commerce in terms of the seafood deficit and trying to also, I think, protect wild-caught fisheries as well. So what more would you like to see us do in terms of aiding in that effort? Because for a long time we've been, and we actually have a panel at Chow on this one, for a long time the country's been actually grappling with how do we actually move aquaculture forward?
Right, I had mentioned a couple things. It was, and I know the bureaucratic red tape for siting is one that's getting in the way, and that's something we have to work with the department on, and we're doing that right now. In fact, we had a big meeting today with Secretary Ross's staff to hopefully soon announce a national initiative that the president might roll out. So we've got that piece. I think the biggest thing you could help us with is, again, informing the public so there's support behind it, and that's something, it's an education kind of campaign that we have to go through, but there's just great opportunity there. And I encourage any of y'all to visit some of the NOAA facilities that are working on this project, because it's just terrific. You know, all those species I mentioned, I mean, I've seen pens of these beautiful animals that they're raising as broodstock, and it's just really, it's just fascinating. So any of y'all who like biology, we're hiring.
And can I ask you, kind of similar with the blue economy and how you try to do the balance, there are some concerns with aquaculture, obviously, about disease potential, how you can do this in a very sustainable manner and not harm wild stocks. How's the administration then looking at, as part of a national program, at those issues, and either whether the science it wants to use or the regulations it would put in place in order to do some of those balances, again, that are needed when we try to do both protection and use?
Yeah, well, of course, I talked about the science. One of the neat kind of outreach efforts we're doing is I mentioned a really smart scientist named Dr. Yoni Zohar. He's with the Institute of Marine Education and Technology, I think it's called. It's right next door to the National Aquarium in Baltimore. And so he's partnered with the aquarium and many other aquariums to educate kids and the public on the value of aquaculture. So that kind of outreach, I think, is one real. And there's a little perk to the job, by the way. I got to scuba dive in the aquarium's Atlantic Coral Reef exhibit, and that was part of that trip. I very much encourage you to do it, because normally, who dives here? Who's a scuba diver? All y'all. Yeah. So you know, in the wild, fish they flee from you. When you go and dive in an aquarium, they're like pet dogs. They all come to you. They think you're going to feed them. So it's a really cool experience, and you'll never see the diversity of species. That was a hit. But they're doing great things to, again, promote and educate the value of aquaculture.
That reminds us, we had a panel this morning on igniting conservation through visual media, and we decided our slogan for this next coming up year was to hug a fish. So we can all just go to our aquariums and hug a fish.
You should do that.
And get more. So, well, Admiral Gallaudet, thank you so much for your comments and for the time that you took today. We're looking forward to seeing you tonight at the Ocean Awards Gala.
Excellent.
Keep up all the great work, and hope you'll keep helping us build the National Marine Sanctuary System. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
So it's time for another break, and we'll be back with our final breakout sessions at 2:45. Here in the auditorium, we're going to have offshore aquaculture, so you can hear a little bit more about the discussion, rewards and risk of ocean farming. In Hemisphere A, we'll have reducing risk in coastal communities, and in Hemisphere B, we'll have restoring cultural heritage and the environment. For those of you joining us on live stream, we'll see you again tomorrow morning at 9:30 Eastern Time for the Margaret Davidson Emerging Leaders Panel. Thank you.
What's out there right now is eventually going to wash ashore or sink to the seafloor. There's a lot of plastic in the ocean right now. It has gone global, but it's also impacting organisms, thousands of species in the Arctic, near the equator, Antarctica, the Mediterranean, the Bay of Bengal. It's everywhere.
Sunlight weakens the plastic materials, causing them to fragment over time into smaller and smaller pieces. They'll remain there for decades to centuries or longer.
A somewhat higher concentration of plastic has been found in the ocean gyres.
We need to know how much trash is out there, where it's going, and where it comes from. Well, there are both economic costs and environmental costs no matter where you live. We cannot filter the plastic out of the ocean. Slowly we're seeing international efforts to manage that waste. There are many changes happening around the world, shifting to a more sustainable or circular economy. So what you buy is how you can reduce your plastic footprint. Your choice matters.
Hey all, come join your colleagues around the world for the June 9 March for the Ocean. It's not too late to turn the tide to protect and restore what we all love. I'm wearing my blue, my sea star, and my fish. Wear yours and come join us.
Petite St. Vincent is in itself a hope spot within the greater hope spot